This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to the program. We have a packed briefing today covering major shifts in the space industry, high-stakes military addresses, and significant movements in international diplomacy and domestic policy. Let's get started.
SpaceX prepares for a historic $1 trillion public listing.
Trump addresses the nation on the nearing Iran war completion.
Oil prices surge following the president's latest military update.
Republicans announce a deal to end the government shutdown.
Conflicting signals emerge from the White House regarding Iran.
Military objectives in Iran see mixed results despite victories.
Israel strikes Lebanon as regional tensions continue to escalate.
The U.S. lifts sanctions on Venezuela's acting President Rodriguez.
Starting with SpaceX's IPO.
Elon Musk's SpaceX has officially made a confidential filing with the SEC for an initial public offering, a move that could see the company valued at over $1 trillion. This is a monumental shift for the aerospace giant, which has remained privately held while dominating the rocket and satellite markets. By going public, SpaceX aims to raise at least $50 billion to fuel its massive ambitions, including the expansion of Starlink and further deep space exploration. The timing is particularly notable as it follows the recent merger with Musk's AI venture, xAI, which already pushed the company's internal valuation to $1.25 trillion. This consolidation of Musk's various business interests, including X and Tesla's investments, suggests a strategic streamlining designed to attract major institutional investors during the upcoming roadshows.
The financial implications of this IPO are staggering, potentially making Elon Musk the world's first trillionaire. Analysts suggest that the move to go public is driven by the sheer cost of the compute, infrastructure, and energy required for SpaceX's next phase of growth. By opening the doors to public capital, the company can secure the massive cash infusion needed to maintain its lead in the global space race. The confidential nature of the filing allows SpaceX to iron out details with regulators before a full public disclosure, which is expected around June. This transition from a private entity to a publicly traded powerhouse marks a turning point for the space industry, as investors look to capitalize on the increasing interconnectedness of Musk's technological empire, from satellite internet to advanced artificial intelligence and interplanetary travel.
Next to the Iran conflict,
President Trump delivered a 20-minute primetime address from the White House on Wednesday, attempting to reassure a skeptical public about the ongoing war with Iran. He claimed that the core strategic objectives of the joint U.S.-Israeli military operation are nearing completion after a month of intense fighting. Trump projected that the conflict would wrap up within the next 2 to 3 weeks, though he offered few specifics on what an exit strategy actually looks like. Despite his optimistic timeline, the president maintained a hardline stance, repeating threats to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age if necessary. This address comes at a time when polls show a majority of American voters disapprove of the military operation, prompting Trump to frame the war as a necessary investment in the nation's future security and global stability.
While the president sought to project confidence, many questions remain unanswered regarding the actual state of the conflict. For instance, it is unclear if the Israeli government, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, shares Trump's timeline for ending the war, especially as Israel continues to face drone and missile attacks. Furthermore, the fate of the White House's 15-point peace plan was conspicuously absent from the speech, leaving observers to wonder if the administration has abandoned its previous diplomatic demands. The status of the Strait of Hormuz also remains a point of confusion. Trump has vacillated between demanding Iran open the channel and telling allies to seize it themselves. Without a clear consensus on these critical issues, the path toward a definitive resolution remains murky, even as the president insists that the end of the military campaign is finally in sight.
Now, for the economic impact.
The president's speech had an immediate and sharp impact on global energy markets, with Brent crude oil prices jumping to $105 a barrel shortly after he finished speaking. Trump's call for allies to show courage and seize the Strait of Hormuz by force has heightened fears of prolonged disruption in one of the world's most vital shipping lanes. While he claimed that the U.S. has decimated Iran's naval and missile forces, the lack of a concrete timeline for reopening the strait has left traders on edge. Trump also threatened to target Iran's electric generating plants if negotiations fail, though he noted that the U.S. has intentionally avoided hitting oil infrastructure to allow for potential future rebuilding. This balancing act between military escalation and economic preservation is becoming increasingly difficult as domestic gas prices continue to climb.
Domestically, the president is facing significant pressure as the war enters its fifth week, with the midterm elections looming in November. His sliding popularity ratings are closely tied to the economic fallout of the conflict, particularly the rising cost of fuel. During his address, Trump claimed that Iran had requested a ceasefire, a statement that was almost immediately dismissed as false and baseless by the Iranian Foreign Ministry. This discrepancy highlights the volatile nature of the current diplomatic environment. By urging allies to take a more active role in securing the Strait of Hormuz, Trump is attempting to shift some of the military and financial burden away from the United States. However, his comments regarding the NATO alliance and his previous threats to withdraw suggest a deepening rift with traditional partners at a time when international cooperation is most needed.
Moving to the government shutdown.
Congressional Republicans have announced a tentative deal to end the longest partial government shutdown in U.S. history. House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune confirmed the agreement, which involves splitting the funding for the Department of Homeland Security into two separate packages. One package would cover general department operations, while the other would specifically fund immigration and customs enforcement and customs and border protection. This strategy follows weeks of intense infighting and pressure from President Trump, who demanded a funding bill for border agents by the start of June. The shutdown has caused significant disruption across the country, most notably at airports where a shortage of TSA officers has led to long delays and security concerns. While Republicans are optimistic, Senate Democrats like Chuck Schumer have characterized the move as a political retreat by the GOP.
The path to this deal was complicated by Democratic demands for immigration enforcement reforms, sparked by the deaths of two protesters in Minnesota. These demands had previously stalled funding for the entire department, leaving thousands of federal employees without pay. The new Republican plan aims to bypass potential Democratic filibusters by using a specific legislative process, a move encouraged by the White House. Although the administration has expressed support for this two-track approach, the bill still needs to pass both chambers of Congress. Since February 14th, the Department of Homeland Security has been operating without fresh funds, relying on temporary measures and previous tax-related allocations to pay essential personnel. If successful, this deal would finally stabilize the department's budget and restore full operations to critical infrastructure like airport security checkpoints and border patrol stations across the nation.
Back to the war's messaging.
The White House has been sending a series of conflicting signals regarding the war in Iran, leading to confusion among both domestic observers and international allies. While President Trump has publicly stated that the war will wrap up in the next few weeks, his administration has flip-flopped on key objectives, such as the removal of Iran's uranium stockpiles. Some officials suggest a de-escalation is imminent, while others point to the continued arrival of U.S. forces in the region as a sign of potential expansion. This mixed messaging was evident in Trump's recent comments to Reuters, where he suggested the U.S. could end the current phase of the war, only to return to operations later. This lack of a consistent narrative makes it difficult for the public to gauge the true progress of the military campaign and the administration's ultimate goals.
On the ground, the military reality is equally complex. While the U.S. has successfully neutralized a significant portion of Iran's Navy and Air Force, the regime remains in power and continues to possess substantial defensive capabilities. Pentagon correspondents note that while the Iranian military has been severely weakened, the core infrastructure of the government is still intact. This discrepancy between the White House's claims of victory and the reality of a resilient adversary creates a challenging environment for military planners. The president's focus on touting successes in his primetime address seems designed to bolster public support, but the underlying uncertainty regarding troop deployments and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz persists. As the conflict enters its second month, the administration's ability to provide a clear and unified strategy will be critical for maintaining both domestic and international confidence.
Evaluating the military objectives.
President Trump's claim that the war is nearing completion is met with a mixed assessment of the actual military results on the ground. When the conflict began, the administration set out several clear goals: destroying Iran's missile and naval capabilities, neutralizing terrorist proxies, and preventing the acquisition of nuclear weapons. Data suggests that while Iranian missile strikes have decreased, the U.S. has only been able to confirm the destruction of about one-third of Iran's total missile arsenal. This was underscored last week when an Iranian missile successfully hit a U.S. base in Saudi Arabia, resulting in injuries to American troops. While the Iranian Navy has indeed suffered heavy losses, with 92% of its large ships reportedly destroyed, the threat from land-based missiles and regional proxies remains a significant hurdle for the U.S. and its allies.
The situation with Iran's regional proxies is even more complicated. While Israel has invaded southern Lebanon to push back Hezbollah, new threats have emerged from Yemen's Houthi rebels, who have launched ballistic missile attacks against Israel and threatened U.S. warships in the Red Sea. This expansion of the conflict into multiple fronts suggests that the goal of stabilizing the Middle East is far from being achieved. Furthermore, the president's rhetoric regarding Iran's nuclear program has been inconsistent. Despite his assurances that Iran will never obtain a nuclear weapon, the lack of clear progress on securing uranium stockpiles leaves a major objective in limbo. As the administration seeks a way out of the war, the gap between the declared victories and the remaining security threats continues to be a point of intense debate among military analysts and policymakers.
Regarding the Lebanese front,
as President Trump prepared for his national address, the conflict expanded further, with Israeli airstrikes hitting the coast of Beirut. These strikes, which killed at least 7 people, targeted areas near the city's airport and have drawn sharp rebukes from European leaders, calling for immediate de-escalation. Israel maintains that its operations are focused on Hezbollah commanders, who have been launching rockets into northern Israel since the start of the Iran war. However, the humanitarian toll is rising, with over 1,300 people killed in Lebanon and more than 1 million displaced in just 4 weeks. This secondary front highlights the risk of a broader regional conflagration that could persist even if the U.S. scales back its direct bombing of Iran. The kidnapping of an American journalist in the region further complicates the security situation for the United States.
The geopolitical fallout is also affecting long-standing alliances, with President Trump suggesting he might pull the U.S. out of NATO. His frustration stems from key alliance members criticizing the U.S.-Israeli military campaign and refusing to assist in policing the Strait of Hormuz. Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoed the sentiment, suggesting that the value of the NATO alliance may need to be re-examined once the current conflict concludes. This tension comes at a critical time as the U.S. seeks international support for its phased plan to stabilize the region. Meanwhile, Trump has linked a potential ceasefire with Iran to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, a condition that Iran has so far denied even discussing. The combination of rising gas prices at home and fracturing alliances abroad puts the administration in a difficult position as it tries to navigate the end of the war.
Finally, news from Venezuela.
In a significant shift in foreign policy, the U.S. Treasury Department has officially lifted sanctions on Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez. This move follows the U.S. military's capture of former leader Nicolas Maduro earlier this year, who is currently facing drug trafficking charges in New York. By removing these sanctions, the Trump administration is formally recognizing Rodriguez as the legitimate head of state and a key partner in the country's transition. Rodriguez, who was previously sanctioned for undermining democracy, has since been leading efforts to open Venezuela's oil-rich economy to international investment and private capital. In a statement, she praised the decision as a vital step toward normalizing relations and expressed hope that further sanctions relief would follow. This policy shift represents a pragmatic turn for the administration, choosing to work with established figures to ensure stability and economic cooperation.
The decision to embrace Delcy Rodriguez marks a departure from previous efforts to support the Venezuelan political opposition. The administration's phased plan for the country involves heavy involvement from U.S. companies and investors who can now work more freely with the Rodriguez government. This strategy is aimed at turning around the Venezuelan economy and securing access to its vast energy reserves, which could have long-term benefits for global oil markets. While Rodriguez and her brother were once seen as central figures in Maduro's authoritarian rule, the current U.S. stance prioritizes effective bilateral cooperation and the restoration of the country's industrial capacity. As the U.S. continues to lift sanctions on major Venezuelan industries, the focus remains on building a stable partnership that can guarantee regional security and provide a reliable alternative in the global energy landscape.
That wraps up our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us for this daily update. Be sure to follow the show for your next daily briefing on the stories that matter most.